Now, has somebody ever given you a gift and you didn't know quite how to use it? Time to be honest here, ladies. So, a friend of mine, I can't remember how long ago, she went to India and saw something pretty, thought of me. When she came back, she mailed it to me. It's this really pretty little Indian just a wall hanging, and it's got this cute little pocket in it. And she sent this to me. I'm a very practical person. I like to be able to use things. So I loved this right away. I didn't quite know what I was going to do with it. So a couple years it became the holder for my stamps. But then I thought, well, that's kind of silly. I could just put those in a plastic bag. And so then we moved. We moved and I put it in just my top drawer of my dresser. Sorry, Natalie. And it just kind of would stare at me sometimes. You know, of course, junk would pile on top, but I'd be like, I really want to find a good use for that. So last year we moved to southern Arizona, bought a house, and as I was fixing up my command station, which is, we know it's just a fancy name for a desk area that has junk everywhere. I thought, oh, this would go really well in my command station, and just have it hold some pencils and let's see, some of my chalkboard markers, some of my dry erase markers, and I love it. I love having found a very practical use for it. And now my son has his desk there, and so he's kind of taking over it a little bit, but that is okay. Now, we have these gifts given to us, and we like to use gifts, don't we? I'm here to tell you that Jesus, He has given us a wonderful gift, and He wants us to use it. As Christians, God gives us so many incredible gifts, doesn't He? We have the gift of salvation. But I want to talk today about a special gift that Jesus has left us. He left us a beautiful, rich legacy, and I don't even know if we're aware of it, or maybe if we are aware of it, if we don't know how to use it. So He left us His mind. Yes, let me read to you 1 Corinthians 2:16. For who hath known the mind of the Lord, that He may instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. Our devotional today is simply having the mind of Christ. My first point is we have the mind of Christ, and I'll talk a little bit about how we can use it. And then my second point will be we need to be renewing this mind that He has given to us. We have the mind of Christ. Oh, wait a minute. Do I have something on my head? Okay. I have this little birthday crown. This is going to represent the mind of Christ. It's just something I got at Dollar Tree. Actually, it was one of my daughter's party favors for her birthday. And I thought, oh, hey, maybe that could symbolize the mind of Christ when I talk about it for one of my lessons. So I kept it, and I hope I don't look too silly or distracting wearing it. My husband said I look like the birthday party girl, and I wasn't trying to go for that look. I was trying to go for just a casual, just hair pulled back in a ponytail so that you guys could this expensive, no, this cheap little party favor. But it's going to represent the mind of Christ. It has like these little swirls in it. So it's just something fun I was trying to think of to illustrate the mind of Christ. The word mind is talking about understanding. We have understanding. Now there's something I got to tell you though. Before our time of salvation, Romans chapter 1 verse 28 says our minds were reprobate, meaning worthless. And let's see, 2 Corinthians 4:4 says, the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not. So unbelievers, they have a blind, darkened, reprobate mind. Romans 8:7 actually says that for them, it says, "For it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be." They cannot grasp, unbelievers cannot grasp and understand certain spiritual things. And at the same time, us believers, we have the mind of Christ, and we have spiritual understanding. And that's why there's a lot of conflicts out there in the world. Take, for example, the topic abortion. We have so many Christians that we can't understand. I mean, we just can't understand how they cannot see that abortion is killing babies. It's killing lives. And then we have the unbelievers. Well, they can't understand how we could think that. And I'm just so thankful that we do have the mind of Christ. The unbelievers, they look at us and they can't understand why we would want to go to church. Maybe why we would like to read our Bible, or why we listen to certain types of music. And us believers, we're thinking, we enjoy going to church. I mean, for the most part, right? Sometimes it's hard to wake up for, but in general, I love going to church, enjoy reading my Bible. That's because I have the mind of Christ. Okay, so I'm going to read 1 Corinthians 2:16 again, and we're just going to learn some things about the mind of Christ from this verse. "For who hath known the mind of the Lord, that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ." Like I said, that word mind means understanding. We have spiritual understanding. And I kind of talked a little bit about that. We will not understand everything God does. This isn't, okay, now that I have spiritual understanding, oh, I know so much. Well, we need to use our mind and be developing our mind. Luke 24, verse 45, this is talking about when Jesus, after he rose from the dead and he appeared back to his disciples, he was kind of getting ready to ascend up in heaven. It says, "Then opened he their understanding," that's the disciples, "that they might understand the scriptures." Jesus knew his disciples would need to have spiritual understanding so that they could explain the gospel. And so we too, we should, with our spiritual understanding that the Lord has given us, we should use this gift. We should be reading our Bible and learning and understanding. Now, a couple of years ago, I can't even remember when, maybe 5, everything revolves around when my kids were born. And so it was sometime after my 3rd daughter was born. Boy, whoa, that would be like, okay, we're talking maybe 8 years. I really struggled with reading a certain book from the Bible. That book is Ezekiel. So back then, whenever I would see it coming up, I would be like, oh no. Oh, I just would find it hard to understand certain parts of it. So a friend of mine, she gave me a book about the book of Ezekiel, and I read that, and then I prayed, "Lord, help me to understand this book." Now, I'm not going to say that I understood everything, but I'm going to tell you this. It was amazing. I was reading it through, and I made sure I had a journal, and I thought every day I'm going to write something out. I'm going to use my different color pens where I underlined things from my Bible, and it was really a wonderful time of reading through that book. And I really believe that the Lord helped me understand. So if you're struggling maybe with understanding something, I want you to know you have the mind of Christ. He gives you spiritual understanding. Ask him to open your eyes so that you can understand. We have spiritual understanding, and then we have spiritual perception. the Gospels say that Jesus perceived the thoughts. And I'm not saying that with spiritual perception we're going to be able to go, oh, okay, you're thinking about that, aren't you? Not quite like that. But I will tell you something that I think I have pretty good perception in. I am really good at perceiving food. I can look at a plate of food and I can pretty much tell you if it's going to taste good. I really like ice cream. And here in this city we're in, we have a Cold Stone. Never had a Cold Stone where I've lived before in my life. So this Cold Stone, my husband Tim and I can't remember what you call it. I guess I should have looked it up. But it's the ice cream that has coffee ice cream with peanut butter and nuts, hot fudge sauce, Oreos. And I can tell you when the person, she's, adding the stuff, I'm like, yeah, put lots of peanut butter in it. Yeah, pour all this stuff on. I can tell when they hand it over. I mean, I'm looking at it like I want every spot dotted with something, right? I can perceive pretty good if it's going to be a good thing of ice cream. Now, honestly, I probably would enjoy it if even maybe it didn't have everything how I would like it, but I have food perception. We can look at, so you can probably have it too. You didn't know it. You can look at ice cream and look at the texture. You can look at the different colors and you can perceive if you're maybe going to like it or not. But spiritual perception, if only it were that easy, right? This is talking about we can perceive things. We can sense things. We can perceive things about sin because we have the mind of Christ. We can perceive things about other people, maybe if they're struggling. Have you ever perceived that about somebody? We can perceive maybe other people's gifts or perceive perhaps your own gifts. And we can perceive something else really wonderful that unbelievers cannot. And that is God's love. God's love. We can perceive God's love because we have the mind of Christ. 1 John 3:16 says, "Hereby perceive we the love of God because he laid down his life for us." I don't want to take this for granted. I was talking to a young lady one time, knocking on doors, inviting people to church, sharing verses, scriptures one time. And a young lady answered the door and she told me, she said, "Hey, how about for the next 5 minutes you explain to me everything that you believe?" And boy, I got pretty excited. I mean, you all probably know by now I like to talk anyways while talking about the Bible. I had my Bible. I mean, I'm flipping through, starting with Genesis, talking about sin, heading over to the Gospels, John 3:16, I'm in Romans. I mean, I'm like, whosoever shall call upon the Lord shall be saved. I'm all excited. I mean, I'm just like, oh. And her face is just like this. She doesn't look thrilled at all. She goes, "Now I want you to listen to what I believe." And of course I said, "Well, sure, I don't mind listening to what you believe." And she talked about the gods of the universe and some other crazy stuff. And when I left, I thought, that's sad. People that are unbelievers, they don't understand God's love. Now, yes, there is a point where they do understand it. There is a point where they do understand it, but it was so sad to me. It was an awakening to me that I know that God loves me, and that is a wonderful thing to know. Okay, so we have spiritual understanding, spiritual perception, and spiritual instruction. This is where we have the capacity to think right thoughts. We have the hardware, wiring, I don't know how to put it, we have the capacity, that's how we put it, to think righteous thoughts. We can enjoy reading our Bible. Paul said in Romans 7:22, "For I delight in the law of God after the inward man." An unbeliever, they would never say that. We delight in prayer, fellowship, memorizing verses. Anybody enjoy memorizing verses? Some of you all, you like to write out lots of verses. I think that's great. You have the mind of Christ. That's spiritual instruction that you enjoy doing. And I hope that we are thankful that we have His mind. I hope that we'll grasp, but never get over, that we have the mind of Christ. Next, now that we know we have the mind of Christ, there's something we need to be doing. We need to be renewing our mind. I'm going to read Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Now, it's mostly going to come from verse 2, but I feel like they're both together. Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2 says this, "I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." Did you catch that? We're to be renewing our mind. Now, what does the word renew mean? It just means to make like new. Now, I find it fascinating that this word renewing also has another meaning of renovation. Renovation. Now, when I say renovation, maybe some of you are going, "Oh, I know what renovation is." Have you ever had a renovation project where maybe you decided to transform your kitchen or renew your bedroom, basement, spare bedroom? Okay. I cannot really explain to you how we can renew our minds. It's not like we do this, this, and this to renew our mind. Because it's like a renovation project. And by this, maybe you know what I'm talking about. So, for example, last year we bought our house and the whole thing pretty much needed to be renovated. We bought it from the original owners and it was made, I think, in 1983. So we made sure that we wrote everything out. And I was like really passionate about making the kitchen just a really nice place. And so I'm writing things out, what I want. I'm looking at paint colors. I'm on Pinterest, you know. Oh yeah, I'm pinning different kitchens and oh, I like that look. And then I'm trying to figure out how I can make this amazing kitchen on Pinterest, how I can tweak it to make my kitchen sort of look like the one on the picture. I'm talking to my husband. Did I say collecting paint samples? Oh yeah, I'm all in. And as I'm making this list, crossing things off, I'm adding more things. I'm crossing off those things. I'm rechanging. I'm changing my mind on certain things due to prices. I had to be like, well, okay, you know, okay, we don't have to get the nice this, and it's big, isn't it? All right, you know what I'm talking about. If you've done a bedroom and you're going to renew, you're going to renovate your room, it is a lot. And it can be exciting, but after a while, it can be like, whoa. I don't know if I want to go to Lowe's or Home Depot for, you know, at least a week, right? It's the same with renewing our mind. I can't say this is what you do and this is what you do and this is what you do and then you're good to go. I can't say that. Renewing our mind, it's a lot. It's a lot. So I'm just going to look at verse 2 and give you some thoughts on renewing our mind. So verse 2 says, "And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So I'm looking at that going, if I'm to be renewing my mind, I am not conforming to the world. That word conforming is patterning or fashioning. I'm not going to be doing that while I am renewing my mind. I actually, looking at this verse, I think that when we conform to the world, that's the enemy of renewing our mind. Conformity is the enemy of renewing our mind. Now that phrase, be not conformed, the word is sushmatizo, and it actually refers to the act of assuming an outward expression that does not match the inside. It is when we are, there we go, when we are conforming to the world, we are putting on a mask. We're masquerading. We do not need to be wearing the mask of the world. We do not need to pattern or fashion our lives after it. For example, a little caterpillar is born and it eats the little, the little, it just eats, okay? It just crawls around on its belly and it just eats, It eats things, and then one day it gets this idea it's going to hang upside down on some type of a branch, and it's just going to be there until the outside hardens and turns into a cocoon, and the inside literally is breaking down, turning jelly-ish, and scientists cannot really explain. I love it. They cannot figure out how a butterfly emerges from this cocoon. All right, so this butterfly, we're going to call her a girl. She's excited, and let's say she's soaring around, and this butterfly is excited about her new freedom, her new choice of food that she gets to eat. And let's say that the butterfly is flying around, and as she's flying, she sees her little caterpillar friends slithering around on the ground eating leaves. And let's say the caterpillar thinks, oh, I want to be like them instead of a butterfly. And she puts her wings in. Okay, so this is just like a story, right? Okay, so she puts her wings in, and I don't know how she does it, because this is just all make-believe, but she crawls around on the ground and she's trying to fit in. It's silly, isn't it? Why is it silly? Because her behavior does not match her identity, who she is. And I just want to say this, it's okay, ladies, if there's certain programs out there you don't watch. That's okay. It's okay if there's certain types of music, or it's okay. Certain types of clothes, it's okay. And it's also okay if you don't have your kids watching certain things. And I think it's very okay if you don't let your soon-to-be teenager, preteen, teenager have a phone. It's okay. Because we are butterflies. We have been transformed. Our children, when they become Christians, they're transformed. A renewing mind produces transformation. It says we are to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. That word transformed is metamorpho, where we get the word metamorphosis. And that is where we're changing on the inside, but there's also something even a little further that happens with metamorphosis. We change on the inside, but then as we change on the inside, Our outside matches our inside. When Jesus in Matthew chapter 17 went up on a mountain with Peter, James, and John, something really cool happened. Matthew 17 verse 2 says, "And he was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as light." It was mind-blowing. Peter, James, and John, they were like, whoa. And do you remember that there was also Moses and Elijah? They were talking. But Peter, James, and John, what was it that just amazed them about Jesus? His face shining, his clothes shining. Well, Jesus didn't change on the inside. That's what he was like on the inside. What happened, what was so really special about this time, this transfiguration, is Jesus, his outside matched his inside. And the disciples, they were able to see that. Wow, what an amazing thing. And that is really when we are transforming, when we are renewing our mind, it's not all just inside that's changing. I hope that people can look at you and can look at your face and know that there's something different about you. A renewing mind, it produces transformation, and then a renewing mind accepts, submits, and yields to God's will. The last part of verse 2 says, after we renew our mind, it says that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Now, this is the interesting part. We're talking about inside, right? Changing on the inside. And then we've talked about how our outside is matching our inside. We tend to think, well, what I believe or whatever happens in my mind is personal, right? And I would agree to that. You're not going to know what I'm thinking. I'm not going to know everything that you're thinking either. But what you believe and what you think about, even though we know it's personal, and even though we may have our little secrets, but eventually it comes out on the outside. Because what we believe, we end up speaking. What we believe, we end up with our actions. And that is why, my friends, that is why it is so important that as we are learning about the mind, that we do everything we can to protect our mind, to be renewing our mind, to be grasping but never getting over that we have the mind of Christ. Let's look at Jesus again for our conclusion. Very appropriate, don't you think, since we do have his mind. The Passion Week, the week before he died. We don't know what was on his mind. But as we read the scriptures and we see things that he says, we read what he says, we see his actions, we can have a pretty good idea that we were on his mind. Because Jesus, even though his mind may be to you and to me some magical, how does this work? What he thought in his mind, it came out. And I just really want to encourage you ladies that to be so thankful that you have the mind of Christ. Learn how to use this gift God has given you. And learn how to be renewing your mind. Ask the Lord to help you, give you spiritual understanding, spiritual perception and instruction. Philippians 2:5 says, "Let this mind be in you," and in me, which was also in Christ Jesus. The mind of Christ. It's mind blowing, right? I hope we'll grasp it, never get over it. And renewing our mind, it will change our life. And hopefully someone else's too.